music is definitely a fundamental part of life, and everyone should at least try and engage in it at some point in their life, because it is a very beautiful thing. When you hear music, it is pleasurable to the ears, and there's a sense of which music is a part of God's creation. It is something that God has given to us, us the ability to create, and I feel that it is our responsibility to cultivate that potential. Choir is a very important part when it comes to music. Any ensemble where you can come together, not just you yourself performing, but with a group of people, you can see how each person has their own part. When they perform it well and come together and work together, you can create this thing that you couldn't have created just by yourself. Choir is very important. It brings people together. I had an old orchestra conductor, and he said, Victor Borges said it, all of these musicians are very talented in their own rights. It's only when we come together is when we might have a problem. And it's very true. You could be the most skillful singer, violinist, cellist, very proficient at what you play, but if you bring all of them together, that doesn't necessarily mean that what you create together will be beautiful. It takes teamwork. It takes a humble spirit to be able to cultivate something that takes work out, even for the professionals. Music theory is definitely another very important aspect to music. We can hear music, in a sense we can almost see it, what the music's trying to portray, but we won't really have a full appreciation for music until we know how it works, why do things do this, why do things do that. In any way, why we would study science, we study botany, we study why the tree does this, why the plant does that. In the same way, we look at music and look at musical passages. Okay, why does this do that? When I hear this, how come it makes me feel like this? Yeah, music is its own language. People talk about it as universal language, in the sense that every country has their own style of music. They have their own form of it, but in its essence, it's still music. And when we look at, when we're able to talk about music, we can overcome barriers of nationalities and still be able to look at a piece of music and play it, even though I speak English, they speak German, so-and-so speaks French. We can come together and still create this thing that, even though we can't speak to one another, we can read the music, we can look at it, know it, and still be able to create something beautiful.
When I joined GBT, back at this point it was 6 years ago, I heard about the Great Books Choir, and I really wanted to join, but it didn't work out with my schedule at first. So during my third year, I finally had the opportunity to join, and I jumped at it because it's something I'd wanted to do for a long time. When I joined, I had no idea what to expect. I had never sung in a choir. I'd never done any kind of singing outside of congregational singing. So when I joined, I was very nervous. I didn't know, what part I would sing, how to sing with a group of other people, basically anything when it came to singing. And very quickly, I learned just how beautiful it was just to be able to learn music, even if you didn't know how to sing. Just being able to learn the music itself and sing it, even if you didn't think your voice was beautiful. I didn't think my voice was very good at all. But just being able to sing this music, hear what it's supposed to sound like, and then try to make it work with your voice was truly a great experience. I spent 2 years in the choir, and it was probably 2 of the greatest years of my life. Getting to sing these pieces that I'd heard of for years and studied for a little bit, singing, Dies Irae from Mozart's Requiem, singing different pieces from the Handel's Messiah. It's an experience that you don't often get, and it is truly one that you will never ever forget. After I graduated from high school, I went off to college, and one of the first things I did was I looked into joining the campus choir. It's an experience I will never regret. It almost felt like a continuation of the Great Books Choir. just with many more people. And so we've been singing even, just some of these great pieces of old. This semester we're singing Mozart's Requiem. And so when you're in a choir, there's just the experience of music that you don't get anywhere else, and it's something you just never forget. I had musical experience before I joined the Great Books Choir. I had played piano for many years. I've taken lessons for 11 years. I've been playing piano for 13 years at this point, and it added a lot to my understanding of singing. But singing has added so much to my understanding of music in general and helped my piano playing so much, because when you play piano, you're focused on playing the notes and, learning to play it right, everything like that. In singing, you're focused on learning the notes, but that's only the first part. Because after that, you focus so much on the beauty of singing, and you focus less on the notes once you know them. And it's really helped my piano playing because it helps me focus less on making sure that I'm hitting the right note, making sure I'm in the right tempo. And that all just flows naturally as I try and play the music beautifully. And so singing in a choir it just brings all these aspects of music together into a very beautiful combination. And you don't need to be someone who studies music all the time to learn these. I'm a computer science major. I don't sit for hours a day learning music. Music is just something that I derive a lot of joy from, and that I enjoy doing as often as I can. It takes a lot of stress out of life, and just being able to sit and enjoy the beauty of what God has made is truly an experience.
One of my favorite community aspects of GBT has been the singing. I'd always enjoyed singing, but I think GBT, it was the first time I really got to do it in a community setting, and it wasn't like a choir setting yet necessarily. It was, we all get to come together and sing songs and kind of participate in this thing that's really energizing and exciting, and everyone's excited, and we really enjoy doing this. And it was a community thing to do for fun, and that was just really wonderful. And I just loved ending full moon dances and flings with all of us singing after having just rich experiences during the day and feeling really tired, and just kind of having this time to just sing and enjoy the evening and the stars and the full moon was just really fun. And then being a part of choir and also participating in the repertoire of music that GBT offers, it's a really wonderful way to interact with music that has stood the test of time. So in the same way that a lot of the books you read have stood the test of time and have kind of shaped Western culture, we get to do similar things with music. So we kind of get to sing songs and music written by Palestrina and Vivaldi and Mozart, who have shaped the music of Western culture. And so we get to see this with ideas, but then we also get to see it with music, and seeing sometimes the connections of sometimes the literature or just with the texts, but then also just interacting with the beauty that the music offers and the rich heritage that we have, and participating in that, and not just kind of seeing our music heritage within the last couple centuries, but going even farther and seeing how far our music tradition goes. That was just wonderful to participate in that tradition and become a part of it, and start to become a part of repertoire that a lot of the world interacts with, but maybe we don't get to see in the part of the world that we're in, or the culture that we're brought up in. And so we really get to kind of participate with a community of people that is all over the world, but you just don't even maybe necessarily know is out there. And one good instance of this kind of participation in a community and heritage is my sister and I had the opportunity to go to Rome with our university for a couple weeks in January. And we went to one of the Roman hills and got to go into one of the old churches. I think it's called St. Anselmo's. There was a benefit concert that was put on that it was free, and anybody could go, and our professor who was leading the trip suggested that we all go, and thought it would be a wonderful opportunity for us to enjoy some of the music in Rome. And so we all went, and I remember sitting in the pew and looking at the music or at the program and thinking, I know these songs. Like, I know this one, I know this one, and I did all of them in GBT. And so I was joking with people I was sitting with, like, if like somebody faints in the audience, in the choir or something, I could just go up there and sing. Like, this would be really fun. And so even there were a couple that I didn't recognize the names of necessarily, but then I was hearing the music and realized that we'd sung that in GBT as well. And so it was really great because I really got to enjoy the music that evening because it'd been music that I was familiar with. It's kind of like when you go to an art gallery and you're familiar with the paintings that you see, that you studied, and you've kind of gotten a chance to look at them. That's when you really enjoy an art gallery. It's kind of similar with music, and there's not a lot of places you could get the framework of a heritage of music that you would be able to go to a concert like that and recognize the music and enjoy it in a special way that maybe you'd enjoy it if you didn't know the music, but not in that way, because I felt like I was participating in something and sharing in an experience that they were putting on in Rome. And so that was just a really kind of fun experience that made me really grateful for the background that I had in GBT and the music that I got to experience. In music theory, we looked a little bit at a book written by a man who had taught at St. John's for a while, and so that was how Mr. Hendricks was familiar with the book. But it talks about kind of aspects of music theory and what is happening in the music that is interacting with us, and kind of different proportions in mathematics, and kind of the theory behind music and what's happening when we're hearing stuff, and what does it mean to resolve a song. Like, what is that? How is that interacting with us? Why is it important for us to resolve a song, and what does that look like, and how does that work? It was just some really fascinating things, and we got to do some kind of practical demonstrations where Mr. Hendricks showed us some stuff in his banjo with harmonics, and doing stuff with phone chords, and so it's a neat way to kind of start finding language to describe the experience that you have in listening to music, and realizing, oh, I like how the song ends because there's something mathematically going on in the structure and in just the framework that's being set up in music that makes me, it's how I want the song to end, and just kind of being able to see that, oh wow, the music has this sense of order and proportion and kind of this beauty behind it that you don't really see unless you kind of dig into what's going on in the music behind just listening to it. And it really kind of gives shape and enhances your experience, I think, of being able to experience music when you start understanding what's actually happening. Something that I always appreciated about Mr. Hendricks was, and this is something that I've struggled with as I've continued to learn more about the world and find out how difficult it is and how difficult it is to live well in it. And it's so easy to read some of these books and get overwhelmed by the import of what they have to say, and this is all so important, and Mr. H does a really great job bringing out how important everything is. And you kind of want to sit in it, and you want to think about it, and you want to worry and fret about it. And then so in class you'd be, wow, this is huge, and oh, it's so important for my life. And then Mr. H would get up and be like, let's go sing, let's go play croquet. And we would get up and sing, and it was a complete shift in the atmosphere. And I would be with other people, and I would hear all their voices singing, and it gives you a different perspective. You can look at the world intellectually and try to understand it and figure it out and pull the pieces apart and put it back together and try to make something of it. But music is a way to get a different perspective, a different angle, and understand the world in completely not an intellectual way. It can be, but it's also when a feeling, it's one where you feel the waves in the room, you feel the energy, and especially when everybody's, more than one person is doing it, when you have a lot of people, and you feel the energy in the room, and there's something happening, and it's very beautiful. And that was always a wonderful experience, and I remember that was something about GBT. When I first experienced singing, I've always loved to sing, and I've always enjoyed singing with other people, but that was an experience, singing in the hall, and being surrounded by beauty, and being with people who I loved and cared for, and singing. It brings you together in a way that nothing else will. Maybe sports can, but I'm not really much of a sports person. But you have to work together. You have to listen to one another. It's a completely different kind of exercise. Instead of, you have to listen in GBT and when you're discussing, but it's a completely different kind of listening. And it's kind of a language of its own, and it has its own persuasiveness, and it has its own kind of wooing or calling. I think God works that way as well. At least I experience that very strongly in music. And it's also just great to be able to take elsewhere when reading parts, learning how to read parts better. When we would sing, I was able to, if I go to a new church and they have a hymnal, I can open the hymnal and sing the alto line. Or if I know the song, oftentimes I'll go to a concert or I'll go somewhere and I'll know the song that's being sung because I sang in GBT. So that's also been really wonderful. It's kind of gives you a context, it broadens your perspective and broadens your horizons. And when we read The Sense of Music for music theory, the author talked about how one of the most important things about music is listening. And I remembered that because when I went to college and took cello lessons, my teacher told me, Alyssa, 90% is listening. The rest is that's all technique that you have to accumulate, but most of it is listening. You have to listen. And I think that's, if you don't listen, you can't experience it. And part of that too, though, is being able to, I haven't really had this experience because I've grown up with music. I've played it for many years. Played piano, cello, so I have words to put to music. But a lot of my friends didn't have that, and so when we'd be talking about something, and this comes up in lots of circles, not just in GBT, it comes up later as well when we would talk about music and we talk about beats or rhythm or harmony and melody and use these terms. People look at you and they don't know what on earth is going on. But for me, it was natural. I could use the vocabulary to talk about it, and when I had the vocabulary, I was able to go further in the discussion. I didn't have to establish, okay, this is what a quarter note means, this is what a cappella means, this is what harmony is, and so I wouldn't have to establish all of those things. You can go further in the discussion. You could talk about what it's doing and how do you get that effect and how do you create a certain kind of experience, what's happening, and this kind of music as opposed to this kind of music, what are they doing differently and how does it affect you? So having vocabulary, it helps you go further than just, once you have it, than just the sounds and the feelings, you can go further and start talking about the philosophy of it or what they're trying to do. So much of it has a philosophy and a theory and a motive that they're trying to do. And they do that all through the theory. And understanding that is really helpful for understanding their project and their purpose and what they want to do.